All right, and we're live.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, we're live.
Hello, everyone. We're just going to wait a couple seconds for people to start joining. As you join, if you like, you can say hello in the chat.
Yeah, we're live.
There we go.
I can see.
We're starting to get a few people. Hello, everyone. We're again, if there's somebody who wants to say hello in the chat, let us know.
In the meantime, we can have a toast for Twitter. In the meantime,
just wait a few seconds
for Twitter and Elon Musk.
Did you see the fake? Did you see the news story where the fake employees pretended to work for Twitter and gave an interview to all the big news channels, CNN, etc.? Did you see that? Hi, Ivan. Oh, this is hilarious. So I'm not sure who organized this, but two actors basically pretended to be employees who had been fired by Twitter, and they stood outside the Twitter offices, and therefore they were interviewed by CNN and all the big news corporations.
Yeah.
And they just said the most ridiculous things, of course, on purpose, being actors. One of the conversations ended with this line. I'm sorry, I have to go. I have to touch base with my husband and wife, both. So people went crazy saying, who the hell is this person? Oh, I have to touch base with my husband and wife? What is that all about? But anyway, yeah, just a little bit of Elon Musk humor.
A little polygamy.
In some photos around, they were like two actors with boxes outside.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the sort of what gave it away is the fact that their names, or one of them was called something Ligma, and the other one was called something Johnson. And I don't know how familiar our audience is with internet humor, but Ligma is a popular joke online. You can look this up. Not safe for work. You can look up what this means. But all right, I think everybody has joined at this point. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome you to this Salon de la Musique Community Call with composer Brian Field. Brian, can you please introduce yourself for our audience?
Yes, first of all, thank you, Nicola and crew here for inviting me on to this episode of Le Salon de la Musique. My name is Brian Field. I'm a composer based just outside of the New York City area. Been composing since I was 16. I'm now you can see gray hairish. So been at it for a while. A composer who studied first at Connecticut College, subsequently at Juilliard School, and then at Columbia University, and compose a whole range of different types of music, from solo, instrumental, chamber, orchestral, the whole gamut. Done a little bit of television and film as well, but thrilled to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
We look forward to asking you questions about all of the above. Of course, we also have Le Salon de la Musique's admins, Anna, Francesco, and Antonia.
Hello everyone.
I want to say hello to my dear friend Anthony Elia.
Hello, Tony. How are you?
All right. So I want to jump right into it. Brian, what made you decide to compose Three Passions for Our Tortured Planet?
So this piece, as many of you may know, is a piece that's really centered towards climate change awareness. And given the very polarized nature of the conversation, where certain individuals refuse to acknowledge climate change, others are highly supportive of it, this was actually a softer way to engage in that kind of conversation through music, obviously, where instead of having a verbal, perhaps passionate conversation about the topic, it could be the opening, a softer way of beginning that discussion that would be absent the kind of vitriol that oftentimes accompanies, face-to-face and angrier types of conversation.
Have you ever had any of these conversations?
I have with folks that completely deny that there's any kind of climate change crisis happening, and it's very frustrating. They're not scientists; they can't really cite much scientific work. I suppose there are still folks out there that believe the Earth is flat as well. So there's no escaping some of this type of mentality, but. It is certainly a frustrating type of conversation. So, over time, through more and continued scientific publication and research and attention, my hope is that it becomes less of a argument and more of a cooperative type of effort we can all take together.
Absolutely. Brian, what is your creative process usually look like, and how has it been different while you've been composing Three Passions for a Tortured Planet? Which, by the way, when did you begin composing Three Passions, and how long did it take you? Did it take you maybe more or less compared to your past compositions, which you've told us are many?
Yes. So I began this a couple of years ago. And it was really the beginning of a collaboration with a fellow Juilliard graduate, Korean pianist, Kei Kyung Kim, who is in Seoul. She and I began to have a conversation around, the piece and the idea, and began to compose it in pieces. It's a 3-movement work that touches on 3 different elements, essentially. So fire is the first one, glaciers the second movement, and concludes with a movement entitled winds. And this piece actually took the first movement actually probably took the most amount of time, several months. It wasn't the only piece I was working on at the time, of course, but all in probably took around 9 months of compositional time while I was doing other compositions simultaneously. And so really completed the piece at the tail end of last year. And so the beginning of this year is when Kay took it out. And we began this movement that opens the piece up to pianists from around the world to take it, perform it in recital, record pieces of it, post on social media, etc., and amplify the message of climate change awareness.
I'm curious to know, do you have a favorite in this trio of compositions? Because I think I do, of course. I appreciate them all, but there's one in particular that really, really stood out to me, really impacted me. I could really see it.
They're all very different in mood, of course. The first one is highly rhythmic, syncopated, the fire movement. The glaciers piece is much slower and kind of explores the broader range of the piano, the higher and lower registers. And the last one is really the kind of the virtuosic finale, which has some lots of kind of pianistic filigree type of work in it. From a particularly just a showmanship perspective, I think the last one is the Winds is definitely the keeper on that one. Mm-hmm. My wife's favorite is Fire, the first one. She was just like, I love that piece. She just can't get enough.
I second that. That is also my favorite.
And frankly, Glaciers, tends to be my favorite, just from a kind of a, I guess, an intellectual perspective.
It's my favorite too. It's my favorite too. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I like very much the one with the, how to say in English, the big Arctic.
It's Glaciers.
The Glaciers, the second movement.
The second movement. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I was listening to it with the headphones yesterday.
It creates such a spacious,
I want to play this piece.
Atmosphere. So it's like you find yourself like in a like that you are by yourself in a very like empty space, and it's like those sounds are just like hanging there around you.
Yeah, you
very
found
evocative.
I think 3 more pianists they want to play your music.
Well,
Exactly.
that's,
This is a perfect segue into a question that I have. Actually, maybe this is somewhat of a loaded question, but I have heard different pianists perform your compositions on your YouTube channels. For anyone who's interested, look these up. The channel is called Three Passions for a Tortured Planet. Do you have any favorites in terms of the composers who have performed your compositions, or at least without naming names necessarily? Do you feel like some pianists are able to better express your artistic intent? And if so, how exactly does that happen? What characterizes their superior ability to do so?
We've had so far 36 pianists that have raised hands and either have performed or planning to perform or have recorded. 36 pianists who are already in the project. We've got another 100 or so that are in the wings that are still waiting for confirmation of dates on their end. Really kind of spans the globe. If you go to the website passionsforourtorturedplanet.org, you can see a map of the world and where these individual pianists are, where they've either performed, recorded, or have scheduled a forthcoming performance or the intent to do so. I surely have some favorites amongst the pack, though. I'd hate to name names or call people out.
Right, without necessarily doing that. Just my question, which of course you can expand upon, just has to do with what do you think that some performers are able to capture in their performance that others are not?
I think all of them have a certain amount of energy. And it's actually a very interesting thing as a composer to have a pianist in many cases of these 36 where I've had very little direct contact. So it hasn't been kind of a typical back and forth between performer and composer, this kind of feedback loop. How are what was your intention here? Would you like me to go faster, slower, more energy, less energy? In many cases, people have just picked it up and ran with it without any direct feedback from me. And so it's really a fascinating type of process around composer and the recreation of that composition by the performer, where some performers have done things, either played certain parts of the movement slower or faster than perhaps I had imagined, but in their doing that have actually created a completely different and interesting lens on the composition that I certainly wouldn't have asked them to do. But because they've done it, it strikes me in retrospect as being like, wow, that was kind of cool too.
This experience also enriching for yourself from a musical perspective. I mean, seeing your composition from others' eye of the performance. I think it's very stimulating.
That's right. That's right. So some people would play winds, for example, faster than I'd intended. Now, that's a hard piece to play just at tempo, and they're trying to play it even faster still. And it's like, it makes me nervous because I'm just like, oh my gosh, how are they going to, do some of these later sections? Are their hands going to fly apart? But they're able to do it. And I'm like, wow, that was great. Some people play glaciers, for example, slower than I had intended. And in that slowness, it even opens up the spaces, particularly when they're doing a lot of pedaling, opens up the spaces in a way that I hadn't previously imagined. So it's the fascinating synergy, I think, between composer and performer.
Brian, I have a question. How important is the role of artists in raising awareness on this topic of climate change?
I think it can be enormously impactful. think artists, and this is not just true of today, but over many decades, centuries, frankly, have almost a responsibility to comment on things that are happening socially. In some cases, it's a safer space to do so than directly like walking out on the street and proclaiming it in words or writing it in words. Music has that whole capacity of tapping into people's emotions. And so being able to do something constructive and to be able to build people's passions, no pun intended, around a particular topic, social topics. Now that could be climate change, that could be gun control, that could be gender equality, it could be many things. But to use an artistic medium, whether it's music, whether it's painting, dance, any number of different artistic mediums, is a way to support the discussion that can happen. Now, I think this is almost a counterpoint to some of the things we've seen very recently around climate change demonstration, through the last generation folks and, throwing food on priceless works of art in museums and gluing their hands to the wall. I get it, that there's a frustration of people to get attention around this issue, much as I was saying earlier, trying to, focus the media's attention, to do that in a kind of quasi-destructive way, albeit the paintings weren't destroyed, seems to me not the best way to do it. I mean, to a large extent, you're going to alienate just as many people as you might actually find support.
Precisely.
So I think a much more constructive type of platform and a constructive way of approaching the argument is much more valuable and will not alienate people that might otherwise support the cause.
Do you think these protesters? Do you think they actually care deeply for the cause? Because if their acts are somewhat actually destructive in terms of the image that they project, then do you believe that they are truly well-meaning, or maybe could it be that some of these protesters actually are just looking for their 15 minutes of fame?
I think they're, perhaps the 15 minutes of fame, but I think there's also a enormous degree of frustration.
Yeah.
We've got so many things happening in the world. I mean, we've got the war in Ukraine. We have, different political, the crazy stuff happening politically in the UK. I mean, there's like lots of fodder for news coverage, for media coverage.
Fodder is the right word.
And so, the media, mainstream media, is always going to focus on things that are going to generate, actually support advertising revenue, right? So they're going to look at the things that are going to be the hottest, the craziest thing at the moment that are going to drive viewership, drive readership. And in any given day, that could be something around climate change. In fact, the New York Times over the past few days has written several pieces around climate change. And but that's irregular. Most of the time, people are writing on other topics. It's the hot topic of the day, depending on what geography you might be in. And so, even with the increasing urgency of this topic, it's not always the hottest topic, because the media is always going to look for the latest, hottest, craziest thing to report on. And I think out of that comes the frustration from these protesters, and frustration for people that are supporting this. And I saw I don't think they're necessarily trying to be destructive, because they at least allegedly knew that there was glass over the paintings. But one step follows another, and a next step could very well be someone trying to smash the glass and then trying to deface it, or find a piece of artwork that isn't protected. So I think it's the beginning of a bad set of potential consequences through this precedent, and more constructive means could certainly be employed to support the movement.
Brian, can I ask you one question, sir? Do you think actually that many students or professional musicians want to risk exposing themselves on these topics? I believe that some are afraid, not only as regards the choice of a new repertoire, but I think they're afraid to get involved. What do you think about it?
To take a stance, yeah.
There very well may be. It's easier to play kind of standard repertoire. No one's going to freak out if you play more Chopin and Brahms and Bach. But I think there's also, as I've already seen just over the course of this year, a very large number of musicians that are very willing to take a stand. And I think, again, part of it isn't because they have to get on stage and talk for 15 minutes about their political leanings or anything of that nature. They can simply play the piece. So I think there is certainly a modicum of courage required in that. There's a modicum of courage required in performing any kind of contemporary music too. So
we need courage nowadays, actually.
I think Francesco has a lot to say about what you just said now, which is that if you play Chopin, nobody will protest. Francesco, do you want to elaborate on this a little bit?
It depends how you play Chopin. In fact, when Ivo Pogorelic played Chopin and said, "I bring the new way of playing Chopin here, stay here and listen," actually many people were protesting, but who cares?
Yeah, exactly. Well, Glenn Gould with Bach too.
Exactly.
Or like some of his crazy interpretations of Brahms.
Exactly. So
we need courage to express our inner self as
the
musicians,
problem is exactly.
Beings.
Do you think the system, the educational system, and let's just use the system even in a broader sense, is incentivizing musicians to express themselves, or do you think that instead it is sort of a stifling self-expression and let's say innovation from a musical perspective?
Boy, it's hard for me to make a sweeping commentary on the educational system, but I. I think that the way that many young artists are still being told to focus on standard rep as opposed to exploratory new rep is a little bit limiting, and that's beyond social change. It's just like take a step back now to contemporary music. Because it's always safer, and particularly in conservatory settings, a lot of young musicians are looking for the thing that's going to, get them kind of the next gig. And while some specialize specifically in new music because they see that as a real differentiator, I think a lot of the faculty, particularly inside of conservatories, is more conservative in its leaning generally.
Absolutely.
At least in the US.
I think that all our Salon de la Musique admins who are all concert pianists would agree. Is there anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I would think that majority of teachers who would afraid of giving their students the repertoire that includes contemporary music would not be a good performers or performance at all of the contemporary music themselves. So because they would afraid to touch contemporary music by themselves, they would be afraid to give it to their students because they would fear that, oh, I don't know how to teach it. For me, it all sounds the same. So just, play the right notes, and I don't even know what the right notes are. So I'm like, okay, just, play how you like it, and that's it. So I don't feel myself well in this situation. Like, I don't feel myself in a position of authority in order to teach this piece or the repertoire, contemporary repertoire. So that's why I think, those teachers who would not play themselves the contemporary music, they would be fearing giving it to their students.
Yeah, I agree. This kind of professor usually find a safer strategy in finding the repertoire for their students. Then we can understand easily what kind of effect will have on expanding the repertoire of performances.
Brian, is there something you would ask of teachers and separately new musicians, young musicians, students?
Yeah, to be curious. To be curious not just around the backgrounds and the whys of the standard rep and the composers and their lives and the history in which they wrote, but to be curious about contemporary music, to be curious about jazz, to be curious about a whole range of different topics. One of the things that I found, frankly, most frustrating when I was at Juilliard is that while many of the musicians were technically incredibly gifted, the level of curiosity and interest that they demonstrated around things that were non-musical was disturbingly small. And I believe that having a broad range and curiosity about the world can actually provide an enormous amount of perspective and an enriched performance by performing musicians. The more you know about the world, the more you know about the history, the more you know about many things, you can bring all of that knowledge and experience to performance.
Amen to that.
So I think that's really my call out, to be curious.
Can you think of some experiences, do any come to mind, that influenced your compositions in particular? And maybe are there any experiences that have influenced your compositions for Three Passions for a Tortured Planet?
Well, certainly my, sitting down at a dinner with this super vocal climate change denier, got me really agitated and was a catalyst to all of this. I was actually in Alaska a few years ago. Wonderful. And with a friend and friend's family that had been living there for almost 20 years, and had the opportunity to fly up in a seaplane, and we could fly up over a lot of the glaciers, and this friend told me that when we got here 20 years ago, this glacier was enormously larger than it is right now. And just over these past 10 years, so much of this glacier has just disappeared. Now you could see just rocks and dirt, where before there were these vast sheets of ice. I had certainly read about and watched specials and documentaries and such about the loss of ice in Greenland, for example, and the threat of rising sea levels because of that. But this was now I'm seeing it with my own eyes.
It hits different.
Yeah,
when you're there.
And so that's a real catalyzer when you see see it yourself.
100%. I have a somewhat of a provocative question. So some of the people who deny climate change are often maybe larger, maybe let's say the wealthier segment of the population. There are lots of sort of climate change deniers, or at least people who seem uninterested in this segment of the population. But, and this is something that I've heard, and so I'm going to play devil's advocate here. How can climate change be real, they say, if these wealthy people are purchasing properties on the shores of Miami, where supposedly in however many years, not so many if you look at the latest estimates, these territories will be underwater?
It's ironic. It's ironic for sure. I mean, maybe they're just going to build their properties on huge pylons that reach up into the sky,
or maybe they bought insurance.
Yeah,
maybe they insured it for like billions of dollars, and and just hope and cross their fingers.
We have a question for you, Brian.
Brian, have you ever heard the joke that goes, the Flat Earth Association is a global phenomenon? Global? Sometimes there is a bit blindness to these things.
Yeah, well, the flat globe.
Yeah.
But I do think that, I mean, it is ironic that you've got a set of plutocrats that, are buying beachfront property when that beachfront might be largely underwater in 50 years.
That's something that I find very curious.
I have a question for you, Brian. Actually, I would like to know your opinion on this thing. I think that also talking about the students, this educational system, not encouraging students to take risk will lead the artists of the future to flatten their ideas and therefore no longer be dangerous. What do you think about this thing?
I think that's true. Again, I can't speak to the educational systems outside of the US, but I mean, there's been a slow and gradual defunding of many of the different areas of kind of, I guess, non-core academic activities. Mm-hmm. And I mean, this has been happening for many years now. But I think it is it stifles creativity for sure. It stifles kind of broader thinking when all U.S. students are focused on test taking and test scores, and that's where all of the focus goes. It becomes very very numbing, frankly. I've got two children, two boys that are now have just entered university, one a sophomore and one a freshman. And over the past many years in the public school system, while the district we in still has music, has orchestra and bands and choirs and such, there's been such a focus on test taking and test scores and testing the academic piece of it, standardized testing, that the students are studying for the test and putting in many hours just for the test. And so that, takes away a lot of the kind of broader creative time and creative thinking and frankly, time to play. Playing in an unstructured environment, playing musical instruments, doing other extracurricular activities that help broaden their perspective on things just generally. And so I think that is a danger that we begin to lose some of the creativity for rote process and rote technique, which is problematic.
So they can't have those experiences. Oh, go on. Sorry, Francesco.
But do you think that the students, university students and musicians, are they aware of this danger?
I think some may be more aware than others. I mean, it's a little, it's difficult to be aware of something that you don't have.
I will say it's difficult to be aware of a danger that you don't see coming.
That's right.
And I see thousands and thousands of students going to college, having their their degrees in college in music, performance, blah blah blah, but with a massive student loan to pay after with job that does not exist, playing the same repertoire. They are used to not risk. So I see really, with also the AI coming here to to definitely wipe out many of the artists. I found yesterday an incredible software that creates people talking, and you don't realize actually they are not real actors. So what about the movies?
Deep fakes.
Exactly. What about the movies, the movie industry? What about the actors, the operas? What about the music in the future? So it's really strange situation.
I'm going to throw something in here. Brian, have you heard about how AIs nowadays are being trained to compose music?
I have. I mean, to compose music, to paint paintings, to explore these other types of artistic areas as well.
Have you heard some of their compositions? Of these
I heard some. I think they were mostly meant, at least the AI was challenged to compose in a certain kind of common practice period, like 18th century. Like, write me another Mozart symphony, kind of thing.
Were you impressed by the product?
I'm certainly impressed by the technology around the product. One can't help but be impressed. One can't help be impressed by and awed, frankly, by the ability for AI to support deep fake types of video. It's also, I mean, that kind of stuff is also very dangerous. Will it? I guess there was. I forget what country it was. I think it was actually Russia that did a deep fake of Bruce Willis in a commercial, and Bruce Willis was never there. Wow. His likeness was there.
There are a lot of experiments.
Yeah, and particularly as we get into elections, that stuff can become incredibly dangerous.
Oh yeah.
I think this is very important for musicians. We talked about this specific topic. I think 2 community call, the last community call, I don't remember. We talked about AIVA technology. Is an artificial intelligence who is capable of composing music without human input. The most important thing, in my opinion, is that this algorithm is the first in history to acquire copyright ownership. This is huge.
Brian, do you feel, let's say, threatened by the emerging technology? Do you think that it will ever be able to match the abilities of a composer such as yourself?
Do I feel threatened? I don't feel threatened. Can it be used to create music inexpensively on the fly in certain situations? I'm sure it'll evolve. I guess it's the same question I'd ask the pianists here today. Sampled and synthesized piano now is very sophisticated, but does that threaten working performing musicians?
I'll let the pianist answer.
Not yet. Not yet.
I mean, in my opinion, I think we will achieve a level of collaboration with machines. we will reach a sort of hybrid creative process. Then I mean, in the last community call also, we talked about the forecast of the creative economy market, in which this data shows that the creative economy will have an increase in job employment, considering also the impact of the AI. I think this is very important.
Brian, do you envision yourself, can you imagine yourself composing it with the assistance of an AI?
Maybe. I guess time will tell. I mean, I certainly am assisted by, computerized notation software. Like, if you ask me, would I prefer handwriting all of my orchestral parts, or having the computer there to be able to print those out so that people can read them very easily and efficiently? Of course, the technology supports that, and is, I hugely appreciate that, as I suspect the performers do, and as not having to read my manuscript. But so I suspect that over time, the technology technology generally follows commercial, right? So if there's a commercial application for it, commercial support, the technology will begin to fill in and follow those gaps, because people creating the technology want to make money off of it. So where do they make money? Supporting existing musicians. I can see, in the future, movie soundtracks, perhaps, that, the director works with a programmer to, create a score that helps support, his or her vision of the music, or his or her vision of the film. I'm sure there'll be uses for that in the future. But I also think that there's also a human element, an emotional element that, at least for the near future, AI.
How near? How near, Brian? Because I think a common theme with, of course, we're just speculating here, but a common theme with AI that I have sort of witnessed is that us humans, we think we're so special, and we say things like, a machine will never be able to beat a human chess player. And then here comes a machine that can do exactly that. And then we say, oh, well, chess is a game that is predictable, but a machine will never instead be able to beat a human in a word game that has nuance, like Jeopardy. And then, of course, that happens as well. And then the list goes on. A machine will never be able to beat a human in the game of Go, because it's just too complex. There are too many combinations. Too much computation is necessary. And then that keeps happening. So we don't have a very good track record of beating these machines.
Interestingly, though, I mean, everything you've mentioned just now is about a contest. It's a competition. It's beating. It's winning over something,
okay.
As opposed to, a creative process isn't, you're not winning over anything. And so, could a computer or AI digest the entire canon of all music or all art that's ever been created by, recorded humans? Yep. Could it look at all of the different permutations and, what makes it, quote unquote, good, or what elicits an emotional response? Sure, I bet it can, certainly over time. But we humans, as inherently emotional creatures, will always have something, I guess, ineffably unique about what we do.
There is a very interesting observation by Sean. 20, 30 years, over 1/3 of all jobs will go. There are bricklaying robots that work 6 times as fast, 24 hours a day. Sean, there are some forecasts by McKinsey that show that to 2030, we will reach the 14, I remember, of human employment will go. And we are talking about 40 million of people.
400.
400 million. No, it's even more. Okay, 400
Sure,
million.
if it's global, yeah.
Brian, sorry, I have a question for you. You just said that we have something unique as human being, but now I would like to say something with the help of Antonia to clarify this thing. Do we know that our brain works exactly, or maybe we can say the AI works exactly like the human brain? Learning is a process of learning by mistakes, exactly like human they do. Do you know that also machines, they can feel some emotions? Nowadays, there is Antonia, come si
so
dice,
they
sistema, they start. There is a problem. Just a second. There is the.
Sorry. No, there is a little bit of delay, and I don't know when.
No, I say there is the problem about rights of machines. Do you know, Antonia, what I'm talking about? Of course.
Yeah, the name is emotional AI.
And what are we gonna do when also machines, they will start to feel emotions? They also have rights.
Is this something that you believe in, Brian? Do you believe machines can feel emotions and they will be thus able to compose with emotion?
If they do, then they'll be no different than any other human composer.
Yeah.
And so,
interesting. What will be left for us to do?
I guess we'll also continue to compose, right? I mean, whether it's a human composing or creating an artwork in that sense. I mean, again, if there's actual, and then we're talking about computer, like will we have Skynet, right? Will computers reach the ability to be sentient creatures of their own?
There are those who believe computers have already achieved sentience. I don't know if you saw, what is it? There's a Google engineer who claims that one of their AIs is sentient, so he says, and he released a transcript of a conversation that he had with this AI. If you haven't seen it, for everyone in the audience, I recommend you check it out. A good read for Halloween. If you're too sensitive, don't read it at night because it'll give you some chills.
Yeah, I mean, but if there are computer composers then that are also emotional, then I guess I've got nothing more to fear than another composer that lives next door that happens to also write music.
Of course. Brian, I'm going to pull the conversation back from the future, the realm of the future that we have entered into the present, and just ask you maybe a little bit more about some climate change related topics that you might have explored as you prepared your compositions. So I would like to ask you, what is your stance on nuclear power, especially in this climate of energy scarcity and the war in Ukraine and everything that's been going on?
I mean, so nuclear power has it's efficient. It's after wind, it's actually the most efficient as far as carbon footprint goes. There's certainly there's a risk, of course, especially when we're thinking about Ukraine. No, don't blow up the nuclear reactor, please. But from an overall carbon footprint perspective, wind is the most efficient, nuclear the second, tidal / hydroelectric is kind of third, fourth, and then followed by geothermal power, and then solar after that. So, nuclear is a highly efficient, low carbon footprint energy source.
Do you think we should use it? Do you think that there are, of course, many people who believe that nuclear power is dangerous and I'm gonna say poisonous, right? Because of course they're concerned about the nuclear waste that is produced. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think that it's a technology that we should employ?
I believe it is. For the very reason of its efficiency and low carbon footprint. Now, if you're not a big fan,
I want to add also a low sort of physical footprint, right? Because while wind energy is, as you said, very efficient, it does occupy a lot of land mass. And of course, some people are concerned that it's going to perturb some landscapes. And in fact, on this note, I've recently seen wind farms that can actually be constructed in the middle of the ocean to harness stronger winds and, of course, to be far away from populated areas.
Yeah, and there's been again super efficient. I've also read some articles around how the sea-borne wind farms can be disruptive of whale calls, for example.
Wow.
And because just of the noise that it makes, and the whales tend to need their calls to go through miles and miles of ocean. That the wind tends to disrupt it. But
if people are concerned about that, then I can't imagine what they will. Or I mean, they're already saying this about the line. Have you heard about this project by the United Arab Emirates? There's a project. You have to check this out. It's going to blow your mind. But apparently, the UAE is building what I can only describe as a gigantic building. I believe it's going to be almost 200 kilometers long. It's called The Line, several hundred meters high, and it's supposed to be a city, actually, a city of the future, an extremely efficient city. But of course, there are worries that creating such an enormous structure, the United Arab Emirates are definitely famous for their giant structures and ability to build, to erect entire cities virtually overnight. But there are concerns that it's going to completely disrupt the natural habitats, the migration patterns of animals, and so on. So,
Nick, sorry, if you want, I shared with you in the group some data about the value proposition of the AI in the creative economy. The percentage of human beings that employment that will be automated by 2030. I think if we can share it, it could be very interesting.
Yeah, I'll go ahead.
We have here a lot of questions, by the way. We have a question of our dear Alex. Where is this question? We lost it. Just a second. Here. Brian, so this is a question for you. What do you think about some composers who compose a music mainly not with notes, but with geometric figures and some rhythmic signs only? Do you think this type of complex writing can drive performance away from their music, even though it can be highly interesting?
It's a little. It's a kind of a subset of aleatoric music, that we saw in the 60s and early 70s, whether it's geometric, non-traditional notation, or even just sort of suggestive, types of notation. It's I don't know if it necessarily drives performers away. It certainly creates a kind of one and only unique performance. Since no two are exactly the same, or even sometimes closely the same. Personally, I don't particularly. I don't do that kind of notation myself, because I actually I'm a little bit more prescriptive about what comes out the other side, on the performance side. It certainly is an avenue for kind of quasi improvisation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So we have this diagram of our nearest future until up to 2059, and it will go on. So it suggests that in 2024, the artificial intelligence will be able to code in Python.
And AI is expected to lead to some job displacement, initially in routine activities. Then we are safe. The McKinsey
so
Global
it's 400 million,
400 has estimated that works activities equivalent to 15%, like 400 million of full-time employees could be automated by 2030 in the midpoint of the scenarios that they have followed. Okay, then these are the data.
And by the meantime, I go to university to have a degree,
to get your degree,
to get education. In the meantime,
yeah.
I think AI is already starting to write some high school essays.
Exactly. Yeah.
Where were these tools when we were in high school?
Oh, in fact, every time I open any video on YouTube, because I don't have YouTube Prime, I always have to watch a couple of seconds of some publicity. So always this publicity of Grammarly comes to my screen, and so they use this image of the person in the future that arrives to its 20 years old self and say, don't submit that essay, use Grammarly first. Check it with Grammarly. Oh yeah.
I think another estimate is the fact that very soon most of the text that we will read online will actually have been written by AIs. So
but many blogs already, in many blogs you can see if you pay attention, you can actually understand that it's written by AI. But the problem is that because of this social media, because of this trap that is behind this social media, thank guys like Zuckerberg and companies, they created this social media as addictive as possible to destroy the level of attention of people. And in this way, you don't even pay attention to what you are reading. Yeah. You see which kind of weapons they built. So this is for my friend that also likes to create so many problems to Le Salon de la Musique. I'm talking about the owner of the Baraka outside. Yeah, exactly.
We're going to leave that untranslated, but Francesco is alluding to the fact that actually, very unfortunately, we have to announce the fact that Le Salon de la Musique on Facebook is demonetized. And this is because when the Le Salon de la Musique shares original compositions or original performances of works that were written prior to 1925, Facebook demonetizes them because there are companies, media conglomerates, that claim ownership of these, again, I repeat, original performances of historical musical works. And we're fighting a losing battle, and we're trying to find solutions. So actually, this is an appeal to the audience. If you could, please subscribe, and if you are interested in watching and listening to these performances, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, and of course, Brian's as well. We have, I believe, Brian, we've linked your website earlier in the chat, and of course, actually, if you have any other social media links that you would like to share, please go ahead and paste them in the chat, because our time today is drawing to a close. So it would seem that
Twitter.
Twitter.
I want to say also we have our Twitter account. If you want to subscribe to our Twitter account, consider also now we have a fresh air, hoping that our dear friend Elon will also solve this problem for classical musicians. And so please subscribe to our Twitter and Telegram, and to Mark Zuckerberg.
It's a common war. We have all to migrate to different platforms.
Yeah.
Right. We really need platforms that understand the situation that especially classical musicians are in, because again, much of the repertoire of classical musicians is copyright free. The work itself is copyright free because it was composed prior to 1925. And so, you know, if a musician nowadays records an original performance, it's just unbelievable that their work gets claimed by the likes of Sony and co.
But it's crystal clear. It's illegitimate attack, really.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Even Brian, maybe you've seen some of Anna's etudes, etudes that she has recorded, and it's incredible how those get demonetized
immediately. At the second we post them. It's like...
And even without the possibility to send them a claim.
Yeah.
So we have absolutely no voice.
I don't know if our classical musicians friends can see this kind of danger. Like we have our digital life in the hands of big corporations. And yeah,
they are still practicing. They are practicing. Don't disturb them.
Improving their technical skills.
Yeah.
No. It's very important to improve your technical skills. You know, we know, but you know, it's also important to see if there is some dangers around that is hunting yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Brian. We have lots more questions for you, but unfortunately, we're out of time today. Maybe we can schedule a part 2 sometime in the future, so you can update us on your latest work. We'd love to share it on the Salon de la Musique, as long as Mark Zuckerberg doesn't stop us from doing so.
Oh, we have a comment from our friend from UK, Richard Emmy. He's a journalist and one of the founder of interview concert series in Worthing. It's the south of UK. So hard in the UK now to imagine any climate change deniers taking any notice of classical concerts. New compositions being performed warning and lamenting the environment situation have for some time been part of the arts landscapes. So you never know. Should it happen, it would be great, enhancing publicity for classical and potentially brand field. Live classical concerts will engage. Protective audiences listening are a different protesting prospect compared to attacking a painting in as and then and it's just
the comment is too
oh, maybe it's too long.
We cannot read it.
Yeah.
But all right.
Thank you, Richard.
Brian, I'm going to thank you again. Everybody here at Le Salon de la Musique thanks you, and we'll see everyone, the audience, at the next live community call. Thank you,
Brian. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Thank you. Bye.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.